All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krueg Show with another 49er video as we talk a little bit about the newest free agent on the market and whether or not the Niners will show interest, and that's Gabe Davis, the wide receiver cut today by the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll discuss him and the Niners' viability in signing him coming up next. But first, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out, and they do run out. So get there early, get some brisket chili. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corners Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, on the Monterey Peninsula. Give my friend Anthony Catania a call for all your sports cards and collectible needs at Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. Anthony's at 831-521-5264. All right, let's talk a little bit about one of the big stories of the day in the NFL world, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars said goodbye to Gabe Davis, the veteran receiver. And, you know, you look at the 49ers situation coming out of the draft, they could use a wide receiver. They absolutely could. They're a little bit thin. They went into the draft thin on the line, the offensive line and defensive line. They added a couple offensive linemen, one in the draft, one after the draft. They added 4 or 5 defensive linemen along the in the draft weekend as well. So they're much more fortified on the line of scrimmage than they were going into the draft. But they're still a little bit thin on the perimeter. And that enters Gabe Davis into our discussion because today the Jacksonville Jaguars cut the wide receiver loose. And immediately, ex-49er offensive lineman John Feliciano, who's a great follow on X at Mongo Feliciano, tweeted out, Gabe Davis would be a perfect fit in San Francisco. And I kind of agree. With Big John. I think he's right. Now, last offseason, the Jaguars signed Gabe Davis to a 3-year deal for $39 million. And I didn't think he was worth that kind of money. He had a good career in Buffalo. He was good in college at Central Florida. But he only played 10 games this year with Jacksonville. He caught 20 passes for 239 yards. So it wasn't like he lit it up in Jacksonville and, they went and added other receivers in the offseason, and they're looking at kind of reshaping their whole deal. And James Gladstone's the new general manager there. That's not the same general manager that signed Gabe Davis to the 3-year, $39 million contract. That was Trent Baalke and Ethan Waugh, and those guys are out. And now it's the James Gladstone era in Jacksonville. And this is where you sometimes see good players kicked out, because you have a regime change, and a regime change comes a whole new set of eyes and a whole new thought process. And a lot of times the guys that were coveted by the last regime are not coveted by the new regime. And I think that's really what's going on here with Gabe Davis. I think from the 49er perspective, let's take a look at where the Niners are depth chart wise at wide receiver. Okay. So they have a number of names that they have on their 90-man offseason roster that they'll bring to training camp. But when you look closer, you realize it's a lot of hollow. There's a lot of hollow roster fillers there, and there's not a lot of guys that can actually do the job. So let's look at the receiving core top to bottom. It starts with Brandon Aiyuk. Now, Aiyuk suffered a major knee injury in like week 7 last year. So I would say you're probably not going to see him back until at least week 7, probably more like, November. That would be my guess. He tore the MCL, the PCL, the ACL, I think, or maybe ACL, PCL, not the MCL, but he also tore the meniscus. So he's got a major rehabilitation in front of him. He's going through it. But I think it's foolish to think that you could lean on him this year. 1, he's not going to be there at the beginning of the year. 2, when he is there, he's probably going to be diminished, quite a bit diminished with that level of injury coming off of that kind of an injury. I would imagine he's not going to be the same player. So you have Brandon Aiyuk, but he is slated for the IR, the PUP, whatever list you want to put him on, but he ain't going to play. He's not going to play at all in August. He's not going to play at all in September. I doubt he plays at all in October. I think you're going to see him in November, and it may be late November and maybe December. So put a line through Aiyuk. Whatever he gives you this year is kind of gravy. Okay, so let's look at the rest of the receiving core. Normally teams keep 5 or 6 wide receivers. The Niners have Ricky Pearsalll coming off his rookie year where he wasn't very good until the last couple of games, and then he was very good. So we're not 100% sure what to expect from Ricky Pearsalll. Then you have Jauan Jennings, who, what a great story Jauan Jennings is, right? 7th round pick that's made a nice career for himself in the NFL, but he's still slow. He's still talking about a 4.6, 4.7 possession receiver. He's not scaring anybody. Then you got Jacob Cowing, who is fast, 4.37 speed, but he couldn't even keep his feet, and he played at about 170 pounds last year, and he probably needs to get up, put on 15, 20 pounds of good weight before he's going to be able to really play and do anything from scrimmage in an NFL game. Then you have Jordan Watkins, the rookie from Ole Miss, and I really like Jordan Watkins. He also runs in the 4.3s, and I think he's going to help right away, but he's a rookie, and rookie receivers don't do much. So, I mean, once again, we are now 4 receivers in, and we haven't found a single receiver yet who we can absolutely depend on as like the go-to guy. Is Pearsalll the go-to guy? If he is, it's a projection. Is Jauan Jennings the go-to guy? In no universe was that ever the intention. Jacob Cowing couldn't get on the field last year, did very little. Jordan Watkins is a rookie. Demarcus Robinson comes over from the Rams. He's not a burner, but he is a decent NFL receiver, but he's going to probably miss 3 games with a suspension because of the DUI. So Robinson could miss the first 3 games. Then you got Junior Bergen, who's a Montana, wide receiver / return guy, who's really probably more of a return guy, who also is not fast. You have Isaiah Hodgins, who's a Berean Christian kid who went to Oregon State. He's had a brief, career in the NFL, but he's not a runner per se. You have Isaiah Nayer, who's always, is like everybody's favorite size speed freak, but really doesn't have any collegiate production to back that up. You have Terrell Owens' son that didn't even really play high school football, and he's very much developmental. Trent Taylor, I don't think is NFL. I mean, he's probably cut for sure. Russell Gage, that's just a guy who's been in the league, who's hanging around. They don't have much. So, I mean, look at that right there. They have a receiving core with a lot of names on it, but I don't see a lot of production there. I mean, there's no Debo, you're not going to have Aiyuk for a good chunk of the year. So somehow, some combination of Pearsalll, Jennings, Jordan Watkins, Demarcus Robinson, Jacob Cowing, Junior Bergen, Isaiah Hodgins, that's going to have to be good enough. And I just look at Gabe Davis and say, this is just an absolute gift from the football gods that this guy's available first week in May. He's 6'2", 215 pounds, 4th round pick by the Bills in 2020. He himself is not a burner. You were talking about 4.54 speed, but what he is, he's a sideline threat. He's got a good feel for how to create space in the short area and in the long area. He's a strong hand fighter. He's got a little bit of build-up speed, but he's a good ball tracker. He's got good ball skills. He can high point the football. He can make plays down the field. He's not the quickest receiver of all time, but this guy had multiple touchdowns 5 times, in his final year in college, and he catches the ball away from his frame. He's a really good hand fighter on all the, he'll fight you and fight the DB on all the short and intermediate stuff. He's great at creating space with his jab off the line of scrimmage. He can stack corners and he'll sometimes get called for the push off, trying to create space down the field, but he can stack a corner and keep him on his hip and get down the field and show some vertical separation at times. We've seen him win over the top with timing. He can high point the football. He's got a big catch radius. This is a receiver that makes your quarterback look good because he can catch the ball and he can do a number of things. So I like him. I think Gabe Davis, makes a lot of sense. He's strong. He can block. He's smooth. He's got smooth burst at the stem. He can gain ground on post routes. He's got good skills tracking the deep ball. We've seen him string together double moves at times. So, I mean, this guy's got hands. He's got production. He's got ability. He can beat press coverage. There was a lot of people that wondered, could Gabe Davis separate in the NFL? But I think he's proven that he can separate. So he was a little bit of a project coming out of college, but now, he's a guy with good hands, good size. I think he's got enough speed to play in the NFL. So, it's interesting. I mean, this new regime in Jacksonville did not draft him. They did not sign him. He played in only 10 games last year. He missed the final 6 with a torn meniscus. But Gabe Davis has done it. He's done it, and he kind of is a little bit proven in the playoffs. In 2021 in the postseason, he was, behind Stephon Diggs, he was Josh Allen's second receiver. And he had a monster game against KC in the divisional round. He caught 8 balls for over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns that night. The Bills eventually lost the game in overtime, but this guy showed up in a huge way in the playoffs. So I'm looking at the Niners going, who's your outside receiver with no Brandon Aiyuk? Who's going to be the guy that steps up with no Aiyuk? And I like the makings of this receiving core. I think it's a pretty good group. Pearsalll, I think, is a good route runner. Jennings is tough as heck. Cowing has some speed. Watkins, I think, has some speed and elusiveness. Demarcus Robinson's got some good ball skills. Hodgins has some good ball skills. But I think it's safe to say that with Demarcus Robinson likely to miss, a good chunk of the first month, with Watkins being a rookie, with Cowing being unproven, with Bergen being a rookie, with Nair being a rookie, with with Jauan Jennings, not being a burner per se, and he's not really a downfield threat. With Pearsalll, he ran 4.41, but he seems more like a short and intermediate receiver. It would be nice if they had a boundary receiver who could, play that X position and get down the field and make some plays. Now, I realize Gabe Davis is not, he's not a 4.3 burner. I even threw out the other day, I saw Green Bay wanted to shop Romeo Doubs, and I thought, man, if Green Bay wants to shop Romeo Doubs, if I'm John Lynch, I'm putting in a call there. I think Romeo Doubs would be a great fit. But in a lot of ways, the things I like about Doubs are the same kinds of things I like about Gabe Davis. And Gabe Davis isn't going to cost you a 4th or 5th round pick like Doubs will. You can get him for nothing. And I think the price tag is going to be reasonable. You could do an incentive-laden deal, kind of a prove-it type contract for Gabe Davis. I think if you added a big receiver like Gabe Davis to what you already have, it takes a lot of pressure off Aiyuk to not have to rush back. Takes a lot of pressure off Pearsalll in his second year. Takes a lot of pressure off Cowing in his second year. Takes a lot of pressure off Jordan Watkins in his rookie year. And it gives Jauan Jennings a real running mate at wide receiver. And if you're really serious about being a playoff team, and the Niners are, Gabe Davis would help. I don't think Gabe Davis is worth the 3-year, $39 million deal Jacksonville paid him a year ago. But I also think he's a very underrated receiver with underrated ball skills who could really help the 49ers. I think he's scheme versatile. I think he could really help the Niners. I think he could wind up being one of Brock Purdy's favorite go-to receivers. So I'm all about it. If the price is right, if you can do an incentive-laden deal to kind of incentivize Davis to have that big production year that you want from him, I think it makes a lot of sense. To me, if I could add players for the 49ers, I'd be most interested in adding on the perimeter. Give me a corner like an Asante Samuel Jr., who I could plug in to my top 5 corners, and give me a receiver that's got some size and some experience and some ball skills. And Gabe Davis fits that description. All right. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krueg Show. Thanks to Sharp Corners, Sports Cards, and Collectibles for sponsoring this video. Give a like and a subscribe on your way out the door. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krueg Show on YouTube.